if you do not have the right data, you will be winking in the dark, as it were. And if you're winking in the dark, of course, no one is going to see you. If you are not curious enough in this profession, I'm not sure you will go far. Always question everything. Until we become conscious of our environment, we are not yet living. We're only existing. Never be afraid to make mistakes. Again, that's one challenge that people have. I tell people, please fail forward. For every time you think you have failed, draw experiences from it. For me, the philosophy is this: you die the day you stop learning. Hello everyone, welcome to Stories and Journeys, where we explore the transformative power of learning, growth, and resilience. Join us as we uncover untold narratives and ignite curiosity. My name remains Oyedeji Oluwatimileyin, and joining us here today is an amazing person, an OG within the marketing communication space here in Nigeria and across West Africa. He has almost 2 decades of experience helping brands shape quality moments, drive impact, build strong connections with their consumers, and while ensuring the brands get as much return on investment for every investment they make within the market across the continent. He's no other person than the current Chief Operating Officer at the great renowned agency Insight Publicis, Dolapo Ogunbambo. Hi, Dolapo.
Thank you very much, Timileyin, for the privilege of coming. Thank you for the honor of inviting me, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, hello everyone. It's nice to be here.
Beautiful. We're super excited to have you here. Obviously because of the impact, that you had, working across various brands, across industries, from telco, to FMCG, financial services, just name it. You've really touched on so many brands, and the work you've done from strategy to planning to execution, stakeholder management, resolving crises, across the brand and ensuring the brands, remain, at the forefront, of ensuring that their marketing goals and business goals are met. For over 20 years now, if you dial back a little bit to when it all started, as a young boy, and I try to connect the dots now, with almost 20 years, within the industry. How has that journey been like for you as a person?
Very interesting. I think for me, my foray into advertising was a eureka moment. For somebody who studied biochemistry, you typically would have expected that you would find me in the field of sciences, in the laboratory and all of that. That's very, very enjoyable. But more importantly, I think by chance, I would say luck. And of course, there is always the God factor in everything. That prepared me for the journey ahead in advertising. Somewhere in my second or third year in college, it then happened that I kept observing, and the pattern for me was my behavior was being influenced by certain things. Yeah. And I realized that marketing communications was a strong part of it. The kind of products I consumed, the values I imbibed, some of my developmental behaviors were shaped by communication I was exposed to. And it bothered me a lot. And then I had to go back to check. In psychology, there is behavioral psychology, but more importantly, consumer psychology. And by the time I looked at and x-rayed the details, then it got me more interested to say, if a group of people could sit here from some science and art, they could condition my mind to take certain actions
based on how they had programmed it, then that's something that I'll be interested in. And that sparked my curiosity. And I began to probe into that space to say, how can one explore this? Because it felt like people playing God. To sit back and say, I will condition this person's behavior in this way, and this is the expected outcome. It was very fascinating. And that's what piqued my interest. And right there and then I knew that this was the career I was going into. And I began to orchestrate my journey into advertising. And it's been very, very interesting. Yes, challenging. Each challenges come with its own peculiarity, but it's been worth the ride. And it's something that I will do over and over and over again.
Beautiful. I love that. But while you were speaking, the bit around where you're studying in school, biochemistry, psychology, which you have a master's in. When you think back, yes, I hear you say the conditioning of the mind, consumer psychology and how that played a role in you, picking an interest in advertising. But drilling on psychology, because marketing, obviously, like you said, is an art and a science.
Yes.
What role do you think psychology, play when it comes to marketing?
I think it's the bedrock. It's the bedrock of marketing, especially marketing communications. And back then, before I went for a master's in, managerial psychology, I, on my own, was intrigued by that, patterned behavior, expected outcome. And that's what, led me to check more in that field. But you cannot but base a lot of the outcomes of marketing and marketing communications on psychology. Why? Because the essence and all of the efforts into marketing itself and marketing communications is to drive a certain behavior amongst a group of people who are the intended targets, towards specific business outcomes. And the moment you're able to do that, it then means that you understand who they are, you understand what motivates them, you understand their natural desire patterns, and you're able to, through science, trend it, plot graphs. It's funny that it seems a bit natural, it seems easy, but there is a lot of trending that goes on. There is a lot of computation, there is a lot of analysis that goes into all of those efforts to drive the outcomes that we desire. Because until a consumer or your intended target has a positive bias towards your brand, you may not have achieved the results, that you desire. So you keep testing, you keep learning, you keep growing with these consumers, you keep understanding them, and along the way, you keep redesigning your offering to be able to first suit their expectations. Because a lot of times, some practitioners do not get it right by expecting consumers or their target audience to gravitate towards their product just because it has an offering. The fact that it has an offering does not mean that that is what I require as a consumer. If you then know me, you would be able to create brands for someone like me. And those are the keys to unlock to great marketing initiatives. I wouldn't even call them campaigns, because it is more about tailoring yourself to the lifestyle of the consumer, and that's where you unlock growth. That's where business growth comes from at the end of the day. And those behaviors, they are indices to measure them, such that every effort every input into marketing and marketing communications can translate back into return on investment. It's very critical that we understand it, we put it into practice, and then we help businesses to value the contribution of marketing communications into the entire sphere of business operations.
Beautiful. I love that, because to your points, we are trying to reach a target group or consumers, and these people are human beings with aspirations, with goals, with blood running through their veins. They have feelings, in your years of experience, are there certain levers, that you've pulled and you found that these levers have made certain initiatives or certain marketing initiatives successful, while trying to endear a brand, in the mind of a consumer and make them loyal consumers for life?
The first thing is you cannot but empower yourself with data. If you do not have the right data, you will be winking in the dark, as it were. And if you're winking in the dark, of course, no one is going to see you. And data, that's a challenge that we face in this part of the world. But thank God for technology. It has leapfrogged, although that then becomes, shelf data that is available to almost everyone. But you then need to begin to invest in bespoke data that helps you unearth critical behavioral patterns, especially in the areas that you are concerned about, that your focus is on. That way, when you have a deeper understanding of the consumer and you've built frameworks that help you dimension those behaviors, those patterns into frameworks that can help you further understand, then you channel those efforts to solve the challenges that the business faces. So I would say that levers would be data, understanding of, having a rich deck and depth of data. But more importantly, you also need to have enough curiosity. If you are not curious enough in this profession, I'm not sure you'll go far. Always question everything. Always ask the why that leads to the what at every point in time, because it helps you understand better, and then it helps you shape and build solutions that will then become effective. Also, you have to be able to ask yourself from beginning, what is the outcome that I desire, especially as a business? And then what is the outcome I desire from the consumers themselves as humans? What do I desire? And you should then be able to marry both to say, where exactly is the gap between what the business desires and what the humans naturally would want? Because if we take them away from their natural desire state, it then becomes very difficult, and you'd have to take extra effort to make them, take actions that are positively biased towards your brand. So you have to tailor your product to meet their natural desire state, and then you grow with them. Then it then becomes a part of their lives. Then they then get used to it. Then they become almost dependent on your brand, and they become advocates. Now think of the way that a lot of tech products are being introduced. They give you a free offering, and you see that it meets a specific need. Then you get involved in it. And at some point in time, they begin to withdraw some of those offerings that are typically free. So you have access to, let's take for example, the Google Suite. You have a potpourri of offerings. And then after a while, they tell you limit your data. You who has over time been used to storing pictures, keeping files and all of that, now you are limited with the amount of storage space. You have to pay for the extra. Because they've patterned and conditioned your behavior to always absorbing and utilizing their, offerings, then you would not see any reason not to go the extra length to buy that extra storage space. You buy the extra storage space, then there is another hurdle for you to cross, then there is another one, but it doesn't seem like it's far-fetched because you are growing used to it on a daily basis and it becomes part of you. And that way they are achieving their business objectives on the long run. Now imagine if they came with all of those beautiful offerings and ab initio, what they did was not to get into your natural behavior, but just introduce them as products that can solve these problems for you. You just look at them from afar and think, well, they may, but I don't think I want to do this right now. So that's the progressive pattern of building relationships to drive meaningful business outcomes with consumers. And I think understanding that data, understanding human behavior, and then having frameworks that will help you drive the outcomes that you desire and being very clear about the outcomes that you desire is one thing you cannot take for granted. Or those are the things that you can't take for granted. And I think they are the levers of growth for practitioners and the entire practice in itself as marketing and marketing communications.
I love that because what you've said now, there's also that bit around curiosity.
Yes.
You mentioned something around the lines of, if you're not curious enough, you might not go far, within this practice.
Absolutely.
As a person, growing up, I want to dial back a little. As a young boy, right? What role would you say that, curiosity, and as curiosity, or have you been curious, you could paint pictures of moments like that, as a young man within the first 5 years of your career, how has, curiosity, help you uncover new skills, found new knowledge frontiers, and also help you grow, during the course of your career?
So I started my career as an accidental intern. Accidental intern. Back then in All Seasons, then Mediacom, now All Seasons Zenith. And, what happened then was we were a group of young interns. Our job mainly was to help the managers achieve their daily tasks. And in the entire agency then, there was just one, I remember, just one point for data mining, and at every point in time, this was back then when Excel was just new, you're trying to grapple with it. But every time we had to put together a plan, I always asked myself, what's the basis of this? And somebody led me to, this is the data point where you would be able to, find out how this is being put together. So I made it a point of duty then to go and own that particular device. I would find time to sit away and then just keep exploring. What does this say? What does that say? And I could relate it back to statistics that I did in school. And it just got me all enthused and I immersed myself in it. And that became the basis of some form of near accurate, media planning for us back then. And you could jolly well tell people, and consult for clients to say, if you take XYZ decisions, these are the likely outcomes because you have trended the data. And because you have trended the data, not necessarily in response to briefs, but because you are playing with this to see why and how is this behavior this way. I can tell from the data that I saw that this is the way people are living their lives. And then when I see a day in life chart, I can always tell you that, for this particular set of people, if I look at the pattern of either their radio or TV consumption, they most likely will not be available at this point in time. Or if you would want to aggregate them, this particular time is the best to drive the efficiency of your investment, because again, you are always faced with the challenge of limited funds. And when you are faced with that, then you then have to put your thinking cap on to say, how can I stretch this budget to be able to deliver on the outcomes that I desire? And, those are the things that kept leading one on. Then you would check documents, want to be involved in pitch processes. And it was always it felt like a cult then, whenever people are working on pitches, because of course you had to gather information, but you needed to find some way into that boardroom where the preparation was ongoing, either to just support with data, to observe, or to deliberately offer yourself as respondents to some of their questions, just because you wanted to learn. And it gave that opportunity to then grow with time. And then you were given the opportunity to do it on your own once in a while. I remember one episode where my manager then went on leave, and all of a sudden the MD called me to say, hey, what's happening on this client's business? I need you to activate an action XYZ. I took it upon myself. Why? Because I had been deliberately understudying the guy. And when he went on leave, all I just needed was some level of gravitas to be able to assume the role of a manager. And to the credit of, what we found, the client seemed impressed. And when the guy came back from his leave, the client told him, every time you come for this meeting, I want this young man to be in that session, because there was a level of input that he had, raw, but it was quite useful. And then opportunities were being opened to us, but we had to fight for it. We had to be curious about it. We didn't just wait for it to be handed over to us. Like there's a famous saying that would say, power is not served a la carte, right? You've got to go grab it. You've got to fight for it. You've got to look for it. You've got to, and it took a lot then. These were days where you didn't have the luxury of sending files in an instant and the media houses will receive them. So you would have to sit, mine data, analyze it, trend it, put it into a plan, as it were, to deliver some outcomes. And upon approvals, you then have to liaise with then the creative agencies to say, deliver me this communication that will help me implement and connect with this audience. And when you've done all of that, then you are faced with another challenge, logistics. How do I get this to the stations? You must know all the radio and TV stations, and where, God help you, which was the norm then, the briefs will come in and it would have to be very close to call. You would have to get on the field yourself. Having done all of this mental and intellectual work, then you begin to go to those stations, call them ahead, and you needed to go with a floppy disk to deliver to almost every station. And you needed to have the number of, not just the advert manager, you needed to have the number of the production person, you needed to have the number of the offset person, you needed to have the number of the traffic person inside the TV stations, the radio stations, just letting them know that you are coming. And then you would take that time to copy the information at honestly, it was a lot, but I think it prepared us, and it grew our resilience, and you were determined to say, despite all of these odds, I'm going to not just thrive, I'm going to succeed in this profession, in this calling. And, here we are.
Interesting. Again, you speak about this. I strongly feel like there's a bit around believing in what you want to do, that comes into it, right? A level of becoming, right? Yes, you were hungry for it. You were hungry for knowledge. You were curious about certain things. You wanted to ask the why. You wanted to know about everything along those bits. But can you cast your mind back to a point where you felt like you're becoming, a marketing communication expert, right? So think about it. While you were in school, after studying biochemistry, at what point did you feel like, I can take on tasks now, I can deliver on tasks now, and how were you able to unpack that? How were you able to put them into practice to become, a seasoned marketing communication expert? And I'm asking this question in case there is a 22-year-old boy, in the four corners of a university room right now, or a fresh graduate who just finished NYSC in Nigeria, or somebody in Nairobi trying to get a job, and I believe that with this question, you might be able to help that person set, themselves on the right trajectory to becoming a seasoned marketing expert the coming years.
Wow, Timney, that's a very thought-provoking one. And thanks for that. For me, the philosophy is this: you die the day you stop learning. And in learning, you not just get to know more, you get to do more. And one thing I have imbibed, and I ask everyone as much as I can relate with to imbibe, is that every new day is an opportunity to just go and create. And I'll tell you why. Nature and providence and divinity has conferred that power on the human. Every other thing around you is available unto you to create. And the more you realize that, the more you believe in your potentials to be able to create. And you've got to seize those opportunities. Opportunities, like they say, come but once. But every day presents new opportunities. It's you being hungry enough to spot those opportunities. But you've got to be prepared. In being prepared, you've got to learn. You've got to have imbibed a lot of things. And learning is not just book knowledge. It's street smartness, it's industry experience, it's emotional intelligence, it's observation, rudimentary knowledge, native intelligence. All of those things come into play, and they culminate into what makes you a curious and conscious human. Because until we become conscious of our environment, we are not yet living. We're only existing. So nothing must happen around you, and you shouldn't ask yourself, why did that happen? How did it happen? What could have changed? How could it have been better? The more you keep asking yourself those questions, the more you improve and expand your thinking capacity, and then you're able to sharpen your problem-solving skills. And that's what we are all here for, to solve problems. Identify those problems or identify needs and solve problems. That's the basic reason for our existence. And the more we do it, the better we get at it. And success is emboldened by results. At every point in time, when you see that I have tried this and it worked, then it's an impetus for you to continue to try more. And that way, you're able to break new barriers, you're able to expand territories, you're able to create new frontiers. And the more frontiers you create, the more opportunities you are giving people. So I would say, never stop learning, never be afraid to make mistakes. Again, that's one challenge that people have. Oh, I'm worried that I would fail at this. I tell people, please fail forward. For every time you think you have failed, draw experiences from it so that you would know that those ways that you have tried did not and may not yield the kind of result or outcome that you desire. So keep on trying, keep on trying, keep on trying. But in trying, you learn. In learning, you apply. And in application, you get better. And definitely, of course, the results would evidently show.
Awesome. I love that. I love that so much because casting my mind back now to growing up, right? There's a phase in life where, as a young person, a teenager or a young adult, you have so many things in front of you.
Yeah.
For lack of better word, I would say you're not so conscious. You're not so in tune with yourself. You've not found yourself. Yes, you're hungry. You have that vision, to become a better version of yourself, to become successful, and you're just trying to find your way around life.
Yep.
So that would lead me to my next question, right? And I really want to dial back. What was growing up like for you as a person?
Okay. So I grew up in my early years was a mix of city and rural life, urban and rural life. Maybe I had the fortune of being raised by my grandmothers, and I dare say that not only prepared me, though subconsciously, it not only prepared me for life, it also helped me to understand a lot of things quicker than a lot of my contemporaries would. Because think about this, where you had a 6-year-old whose grandma would involve him in every negotiation. I had grandmas who were traders. And for every time they conducted their business, they saw me as a business partner. And I was involved in negotiations from that age. It helped in managing conversations. It helped in expectation management. It helped in shaping how negotiations should eventually land. It helped me to understand the difference between cost price and profit, and at what point you walk away in negotiations. So those things were instructive. Yeah, it was by providence, but again, all of those things helped in shaping one. And then, you then were exposed to schools the like of Mayflower, and you had the opportunity to have related with the great minds like Dr. Tai Sholari, who would at every point in time impact knowledge on you. And one big thing I took away from that man was self-reliance. He ensured that, and for those of us fortunate enough then to have, been around him, he ensured that he ingrained discipline, but more importantly, self-reliance. You needed to build yourself by yourself. You were responsible for yourself, and whatever it is that you make of your life is absolutely, totally dependent on you. That was a huge burden placed on the young, growing person at that point in time. So you conducted yourself. Yes, you would be a teenager at that point in time, but you also knew that you were responsible for your actions. So it helped to balance things out, and you were more focused on ensuring that the outcomes of your actions were things that you would be ultimately proud of at the end of the day, because you had big stakes at stake in that sense. So growing up was a mix of fun and focus. Focus because You knew those who were role models. You knew those who you looked up to, and you could not afford to fail yourself. More importantly, not even failing the people you were looking up to, but yourself, because you knew that you were a lot better than whatever existed or whatever existed around you at that point in time. And that kept propelling one to go further, to go further. And I think what that also taught someone like me was, irrespective of the environment you find yourself, as humans, we are all equal. So you don't see any human and feel this human is more equipped or is better or is superior than I am. Yes, they may have advantages, they may have some leverage, but you can always cover grounds because you have it in you. And that propels you to not look at the person for what is around them, but think of the substance that they have, and you build yourself. You build your capacity.
I particularly love that. I also love the story from where you started from, around your grandmothers and growing up around your grandmothers. It just reiterate the fact that as people, as Africans, we almost share the same background growing up, right? Culturally, and that culture, whether we are conscious of it or not, subconsciously or subliminally, shapes us,
Absolutely.
and if we try to bring that back to marketing, right, when it comes to cultural nuances, it plays a huge role, right, in trying to ensure that the target consumers, can relate with your brand, or that you're even communicating in a way that resonates with them.
Yeah.
In your years of experience, as we try to wrap up, what role do you think that culture, plays, in helping brands, especially global brands looking to enter new markets? What role do you think culture play in ensuring that those brands, are successful, and ultimately win, consumers for life?
Similarly, there's a saying that goes that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
True.
Nothing can be truer than that. We all are products of nature and nurture. And it's the things that we have been exposed to that we consistently rehearse and put into action that then becomes culture for us. I tell you something. A lot of times when I have conversations, the first thing I do is I try to understand what you are saying first in my native dialect. I'm not even saying language. When it makes sense to me, then I can relate with it better, because the context of growing up for me was around that. And for every time you interact with, in the field of marketing and marketing communications, for every time you interact with humans, if you cannot understand and unearth their motivations, there would be a very strong disconnect that may give semblance of false data. It's not false data. It's the fact that you really don't understand them. What are the things that motivate this person? Why does this person exist? Why does this person think he or she exists? What are the things that makes this person fulfilled? They seem irrelevant at times to some people to say, oh no, the goal of this is just, for example, activation. Get XYZ people to sample XYZ products. And yes, you could have placed an outcome that is business oriented on the project. But there are certain levers that you would unlock that naturally would make these people connect with any initiative, any project that you have. And it seems like, wow, what just happened? And people think, oh, this is an overnight success. No, it's not an overnight success. It's deliberate, intentional planning. and sitting back to say, how do I best approach this? What are the things that will help me or that will even give fillip to all of my efforts? So understanding it then helps you to focus your efforts, leverage all of the, I would call them support, but more importantly, they are data mines. And then you have an explosion that is positive for you. That's how I see it.
Beautiful. I think that makes a lot of sense because obviously we're first people. We have things that make us tick, as people. And like you already mentioned, culture plays a critical role, in all of those things. So you just have 2 more questions before we let you go.
Okay.
The first one is, years of experience and where you sit right now, as a chief operating officer at the renowned agency, Insight Publicis. Are there certain challenges, you've noticed within the industry, and what solutions could be implemented in the very immediate, to alleviate those challenges?
Thank you, Timothy. You see, the beauty of where I have found myself is that I am one of the very few crossover professionals in this industry. Not many people started from media advertising and then would go on to lead a creative agency, as it were. What that has afforded me is to see the length and breadth of the entire marketing communications, especially marketing in itself, landscape. And one of the things that I would say is, at a point in time, I also played the client because I was resident agency contact at clients, and for a significant period of my time working on the MTN brand back then. That way you would see the deficiencies across the board and also see things from different points of view, and your perspective evolves. One challenge this market faces is that growing dearth of Nigeria-specific data. Unfortunately, the private sector is not willing to invest heavily on what the government should typically support to provide. That's one. The second thing is that we still see ourselves as competitors rather than collaborators to improve and enhance our industry. At every point in time, one person is looking out to say, what is this my competition doing? Why would I invest and my competition will take advantage of it? The world has left us behind. If all of us realize that we are all in this to improve the collective lot of each and every one, then it becomes easier for us to key into it and together advance the cause of this. Of course, by reason of the size and contribution of some stakeholders, they may take advantage of it early enough or earlier on. But I tell you something, there comes a point in time where things plateau enough for people who have walked the journey to begin to milk the benefits. If we are willing and ready to collaborate, not compete aggressively against ourselves, some of the challenges we face would have been resolved. Because if there is adequate, accessible, almost accurate data, it elevates our profession. Our prescriptions are near accurate. The moment you are able to do that, clients begin to trust and respect, not just clients, even the entire economy, the entire landscape begins to trust and respect your input and contribution into business growth. People no longer, or businesses no longer see marketing communications or marketing in itself as the list of contributors to growth. No, it should actually be leading the charge for growth for businesses. But the reason they don't see that is because we're planning blindly, most times. Not sufficient enough data that is generalized either worldwide or Africa level, or maybe West Africa level for those who have invested in it. But we need to invest in our own original data. That way, we would also be able to help the practitioners become very, very great talents. And by the time we have great talents, they'll be more interested in what is happening in this place. I'd like to see Nigeria where the examples to copy from are Nigerians. Because I tell you something, if we are producing the best professionals offshore, then that means we have it here. Why not create the enabling environment? Why not invest in all of these things so that we can, from Nigeria, begin to export a lot of our practices? We've seen it happen in music. We've seen it happen in fashion. We've seen how Nigeria has reshaped the creator economy globally. And tech businesses see that opportunity here. Then let's grow it. Let's be part of it. Another thing is regulation. Regulation, for me and globally, is meant to create a sense of not just normalcy, a sense of control, but control for improvement, control for development. A lot of times what happens here is regulation seems to be more business focused rather than developmental focused. So regulators come and they come with a business mindset to generate revenue. That's a challenge that will continue to stifle any industry. So that's something that we should also look into. And the way to look into it is more practitioners begin to participate in policy making. If we have more practitioners who understand the pinch of how overregulation stifles the business, then you will begin to see that we make better policies, we make better decisions, and then the industry will thrive on the long run. If we're able to improve our data access, if we're able to manage regulation and support education for learning and growth, then we are going to be in a better place. But the underlying thing is that we must see ourselves as collaborators rather than competitors. If we do not, we will keep having a race to the bottom. We will keep offering solutions that the market will see as commoditized rather than bespoke solutions. That's how I would sum it up.
Thank you so much, Dolapo. Before we let you go, the final question, as we said earlier, to that young boy, 25 years old boy, girl, trying to start out their career now, not so clear on where the next meal is coming from. What would be your advice to that person?
I would say to that budding young talent out there that the world awaits your emergence. And you have everything. You have the skill, you have the intellect, you even have the grit because of the kind of environment that you are being nurtured in to become great. Just know that you have all within yourself and don't be afraid to take a chance. When you take that chance, you would get better, you would learn, and you would improve. Trust me, everything out of Nigeria, the world is waiting for. And because you find yourself in this place, seize the opportunity, and the skies won't hold you back.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much again for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
For sharing, from your wealth of knowledge, with us, and I'm sure that our audience must have learned so much from you.
It's really been a pleasure sharing here, and I tell you, I must really commend you, Timileyin, for this kind of platforms. Because when people do not share their stories, they do not inspire others. And when people are not inspired, then there is a limit to the greatness that we can collectively achieve. And I must say thank you.
Yeah.
It is my hope that the enablement to sustain this and keep it going and to expand will be available unto you. But I also must just keep saying thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And if you're out there, join us to this space. Please like the video. If you've not subscribed to now, I think you're doing something wrong. Do subscribe, share with your friends, family members, loved ones, colleagues, and we'll see you at the top. From all of us here at Stories and Journeys, till we see you again, it's bye-bye from us.
Bye.